Rory, Manchester United getting a victory at Fulham, potentially saving Erik ten Hag's job. Bruno Fernandes with that goal very, very late on. But the overall performance was poor again, wasn't it? And if I were a Man United fan, although I'd be delighted with the 3 points, I certainly wouldn't be getting carried away by that performance.
No, absolutely not. I think it's the very definition of papering over the cracks, isn't it? Yeah. It was a good win, an important win, vital in fact, and a goal scored by, whatever you think of him, he's one of their best players, if not their best player. Like Bruno Fernandes pops up when it most matters to, as you say, potentially save Erik ten Hag his job. However, we've seen these victories for Manchester United before, and I don't think it really changes anything. We've seen them beat Brentford in the last couple of minutes. We've seen them beat Copenhagen, and ultimately nothing has changed. There is an endemic problem at the club, and I think Erik ten Hag is making some terrible, terrible decisions. So, yes, Manchester United beat Fulham as well they should. You know, Fulham can't score a goal. They went out in the summer and they recruited Raul Jimenez, a man that was struggling to score goals anyway. They lost Mitrovic. They're all over the place. You know, the club is quite an unhappy club at the moment. So Manchester United beating Fulham, as much as it's important, it's not the symbolic victory that it's being painted as at all. I think they're still in trouble, and we haven't learned anything about Manchester United. Nothing new anyway. Nothing has changed. Whatever you thought about who they were before that game, it's who they are today. Yeah,
totally agree. And I agree with you on some of Ten Hag's decisions. You know, you bring Sofiane Amrabat in as this defensive midfield dynamo, you know, the one that's going to turn your season around. Casemiro's out and he still doesn't get in the team. Mason Mount, you pay 60 plus million for him and he can't get in the team. Rafael Varane is overlooked in favour of Harry Maguire, who Manchester United were trying to ship out in the summer. There's so many decisions that he's making that just don't make sense.
And you know how you just rattled them off there? You're totally right. But I mean, I could do that as well. I could add to that list. They were desperate for a goal in the Manchester derby and they took off Højlund. Fairly recently, they were desperate for a goal and the managerial genius put Harry Maguire up front. Fairly recently, they were in need of a revamp in midfield and they brought on Donny van der Beek, a player that Erik ten Hag himself had decided wasn't good enough to be in their European Cup squad. Do you see how many there are? Yeah. Do you see how problematic the club is? And I think that the general consensus, I think, of sort of people who discuss football is that Erik ten Hag is a good manager who did really well last year and is making a pig's ear of it now. But I'm not hearing enough of the last part of that sentence. I think people will focus on maybe the players not being good enough, and there are a lot of players that aren't good enough. Johnny Evans shouldn't be the answer. Victor Lindelof should be nowhere near that team. Harry Maguire has been done to death. But people focus on that, and they focus on the Glazers, and they focus on the takeover, and they focus on Sir Jim Ratcliffe, and they focus on the Qataris, and they focus on everything apart from Erik ten Hag's glaring mistakes in that Manchester United hot seat.
Well, he might have made another mistake in the way that he's handled the Marcus Rashford situation. Now, Marcus Rashford went out after the Manchester derby. It was his birthday, apparently. He went out clubbing, and that has drawn criticism from all angles on Marcus Rashford. Then at the weekend, he's not involved in the game. Manchester United and Erik ten Hag say that he was out injured, but I think there are a lot of people out there that are not necessarily buying that. As a result of that, the United Stand, a very prominent Manchester United YouTube channel, put out a thumbnail for an upcoming video earlier today that said Marcus Rashford's future. It was with a question mark. They were questioning whether or not he'll be at the club. To which Marcus Rashford responded on social media by saying, "Can you stop spreading these malicious lies?" What's that all about? And what does that tell you about A, Marcus Rashford's headspace, and B, you know, the situation that's currently ongoing behind the scenes at United?
I mean, I think it's a mess. The first thing that I have to do with regard to this issue that we're discussing here, you know, Mark Goldbridge versus Marcus Rashford, effectively, is highlight. Firstly, I haven't seen the video, so I've seen the thumbnail and I've seen the reply. I haven't yet had a chance to see the video. But what I would say is, again, actually, just in terms of being as open and transparent as possible here, Mark isn't my mate. Like we've met, but we aren't friends, so I have no tribal loyalty to him. I can just give my opinion on this, and it isn't at all biased. I think Marcus Rashford taking umbrage at fair comment criticism, fair comment journalism, and that is what Mark Goldbridge is. People won't like to admit that, and I'm sure that will ruffle a few feathers in terms of the old boys club of actual journos. But Mark Goldbridge has a platform. He provides comment on Manchester United, and he does it to a level that is basically beyond anyone could even dream. His cachet within the industry is unbelievable. So Mark has a right to question Marcus Rashford. He is allowed to present his opinion with fair comment and question whether whether his future lies at the club. Marcus Rashford has absolutely no right to take umbrage at that. He has the right to reply. He has a right to say what he said. But he can't be offended that comment has been passed on his ludicrously poor performances this season. Is that fair?
If anything, the fact that Marcus Rashford responded to that tweet, or X, whatever you call them nowadays, it's only added more to the fire. It's only added more fuel, because more people are going to come across that post now than they would have done before. Now, they've got a huge reach, and lots of people would have seen it anyway. But this only increases the reach, right, of this post. It's
absolutely true. It's the Barbra Streisand effect. Barbra Streisand wanted to make sure that certain photographs weren't seen, and in order to do that, the photographs didn't gain massive popularity anyway. But in order for her to try and squash these photographs going viral on the internet, all she did was lend pump a load of oxygen into them, and now everybody's seen them. So it's the Streisand effect. Marcus Rashford has made it a talking point. You and I wouldn't be discussing Mark Goldbridge, his YouTube channel, his opinions on the matter, and Marcus Rashford's response to the matter if it wasn't for Marcus Rashford going out of his way to give this some sort of credibility. Simply by replying, you are lending it credibility. And I don't really understand why anybody that thinks Mark has done anything wrong, I don't get. Like, do you know what it reminds me of a little bit? In the past, I've been fairly critical of Harry Maguire, and sometimes when I have been, I think his performances have been woeful. I think it's a myth that he has never let England down. I think it's weird the way that he's conducted himself. I went quite harsh on him. Do you remember when he scored that goal against Albania and he stuck his fingers in his ears, cancelling out the haters like he's Kim Kardashian? I didn't like it, I didn't rate it, and I went public on those opinions. People would constantly reply to me and go, you shouldn't say that. What about his mental health, for example? Like, hang on a minute. I in my role as a modern day, I don't see myself as a journalist, but I have a platform where I talk about football in the public. I have a right to present my opinion and fair comment. I believe that is fair comment. Mark analysing Rashford and his performances that are woeful, by the way. Like, Marcus Rashford spending time on Twitter, replying to Mark, surely his time could be better spent. And then it brings us on to the conversation around his birthday celebrations. By no means do I think Marcus Rashford obviously has a right to celebrate his birthday. And some would suggest in any way he sees fit. I would suggest one of the pitfalls of being one of the most recognisable, prominent and privileged footballers in the world, one of the very few pitfalls of that is, you can't go to China White after you lose a derby. Like, it's not the way it should be. It's not fair, but life isn't fair. And one of the very few pitfalls are, of course, celebrate your birthday, but maybe not in a celebrity hangout. Off the back of that, you've been dropped. And I know that we're hearing that it was an injury, but we can employ some critical thinking here, can't we, Harry? Like, 2 and 2 make us a Christmas cake a lot of the time. He's gone out to celebrate his birthday off the back of a derby defeat, and then he's injured. I mean, it doesn't necessarily add up to me. So Mark Goldbridge on his Manchester United platform having a conversation around the future of Marcus Rashford, I don't really understand what he's done wrong. Do you agree with me here, or am I missing the point?
Yeah, I think when you're that famous, when you're in that position that Marcus Rashford is in, people are going to talk about you. Yeah. That's how it goes. And I think if you take, as you put it, if you take umbrage with every single content creator, journalist that passes comment on your performances or your future, you're going to drive yourself crazy.
Absolutely. Do you know the other thing I would add to this as well? Mark Goldbridge, because of his success, he doesn't need to care about upsetting anyone, in fact. He can therefore say what he genuinely believes. You know, other journalists who perhaps rely on the Manchester United press communications officer being favourable to them. Another journalist may actually rely on Marcus Rashford himself having a relationship with Rashford. They won't be able to ask these questions. So that actually makes, if you by extension to that point, it makes Mark Goldbridge and his channel one of the most authentic, because he isn't relying on any kind of back scratching from Rashford, from people within the camp, from Manchester United. He can say what he genuinely believes and what he believes to be true. And I believe that Mark has done that. Other journalists, some people would go, well, why aren't other people? Mark's obviously just being sensationalist. Nobody else asking the question. Maybe that's a positive for Mark.
Yeah,
he doesn't need to play the game.
I don't disagree with you. It's a fascinating debate.
On AM, on DAB, via the talkSPORT app and on your smart speaker. talkSPORT.